Hello, can you hear me? Thank you so much for making time to come for our GCF event. I'm Desmond Atukumsin, a leader of GCF, and we have some amazing leaders as well. We have Karis, one of our leaders here as well, and you are all welcome. I want us to feel free. There's a casual talk that we are going to have. Just some few house rules. Then I will just leave it for the speaker to take over. So first of all, fire exits. Where we came from, that's one of the fire exits as well. There's also a fire exit here. So we should not hear any alarm tonight. If you hear any alarm, don't panic, don't be afraid. Just move straight to this place and don't park yourself at the road, even though it's not a busy road. We've been told that we need to move to the back of this building. Washrooms, we also have washrooms just behind us over here. So I think the ladies' washroom is just opposite this room. And the guys have to go on your right as well. We still have tea and coffee. So when we start and you still want to grab a tea or coffee, please do not hesitate. Just go for it. Yeah. Then we'll be live streaming this. We have people who are joining us online, and we'll also be taking pictures as well. So if you don't want to be part of any picture, and if your picture is taken, you can just send us a message, and we'll just take you out of it. So you're not under any pressure that they've taken your picture, so you're going to use. If you don't think that you don't want us to use your picture for any publicity or anything, just let us know as well. Then we'll have a Q&A time. So the speaker will be talking for about 30 minutes. Then after that, we'll have a Q&A time. We have a lot of questions that you wonderful people send to us. Yeah, but we also want to give you time to ask personal questions here. So during the Q&A, we will mention some of the questions from what we have. Then if you have any questions, we will give priority to those who are here to ask the questions as well. Okay, so a little bit about GCF before we move on to the main thing. So GCF is a Christian fellowship, and we aim to have spirit-filled, mature Christian graduates who represent Christ in every facet of their lives. We want people to have a Christ-like life in their campuses and when they graduate in their offices and wherever they find themselves as well. And we want to unite and equip Christians, or especially postgrads here in London, with the gospel, and so that they can also present the gospel confidently, lovingly, and persuasively. They can also share and implement the best strategies for reaching their own colleagues and friends for Christ. Then also to develop their gifts and abilities in their unique vocations and callings as well. So GCF, we have these 5 key pillars that we normally go by, and that's thinking, questioning, exploring, believing, and living. So we want people to think about their worldview. Whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, why do you believe what you believe? It's something that most people think that faith comes without reasoning. But you need to think about why you believe what you believe. You need to question it as well. questioning your worldview doesn't mean that for a Christian or for any other religious person, doesn't mean that you are blaspheming or anything. You're asking the honest questions about why is this so. Then through that, you begin to explore it further. And through that, and in Christian worldview, we believe in the conviction of the Holy Spirit that helps you to believe and trust in the message of the gospel. And then you begin to live it out. So this is the 5 main pillars that we stand by as Graduate Christian Fellowship. And we normally meet on Sundays, and some of the topics that we'll be having, if you want to join us, theism versus atheism. I think some of your questions will touch on this after the talk. Christianity versus worldview. If you have questions about this, you can come to our meetings and we can explore more. Fundamental beliefs in Christianity, the deity of Jesus. We know that we have a historic Jesus who was human. Do we know about his deity? Then we have the what is question. What is truth? Is truth subjective or objective? What is good? Most people say I'm good. What do we mean by good? And how do we define what worship is as well? So we also have, we are not only academic and thinkers, we also do socials, and we go to trips as well. So one of our main trips is Cambridge trip. And once a year, we have a partnership with Tyndale House. It's a biblical institute in Cambridge. And I don't know if this is working. Oh, okay. I guess not. Okay, let me see if I can go back to this. Yes. Yeah, so Peter Williams and Decker, the principal of Tyndale House, and last 2 years we went there too. And they gave us a talk about the reliability of the Gospels. And last year, Tony Watkins talked about the prophecy, the Old Testament prophecy, and how it links to modernity. So we also have a Christian heritage tour that you are all invited to come as well. And this coming year, next year, February, we'll be having our next trip. We also do socializations. So we have our favorite spot in Wetherspoons near Bank. Those who are in Trinity Church know about Wetherspoons a lot. We also have Weekend Away. So I'll talk more about the Weekend Away in connection to the church that we are part of. So Trinity Church Central London is a church that GCF is part of. And we meet at St. Margaret's. It's just beside the Bank of England. It's just a 5-minute walk from exit 1 or exit 2. And going back to this, you see this nice, amazing picture here of, yeah. We do Weekend Away where we leave the busyness of London to the countryside just to decompress and also read scripture and study. And if you're a postgrad and want to do your write-up or something, you can join us and come for this as well. So we meet at Sundays 10:30 to 12 p.m. And prior to that, we GCF, we meet 9 a.m. to 10:20 at the same venue. And we have hot breakfast. So if you're interested to join us, just let us know. We have some flyers behind, which we can give to you. Okay, so with that said, we'll move to the talk. And I think it's a privilege for us to have Professor Schaefer amongst us. And I'll just introduce him so he will come in for the next 30 minutes, take over. So Dr. Schaefer, Professor Schaefer, has authored over 1,700 scientific publications in the field of computational quantum chemistry. He's widely regarded in his field for the groundbreaking and pushing the boundaries of molecular quantum mechanics. His contributions are numerous, and he's celebrated globally. So I'll just mention one of the few key ones. So there are some conferences that have been held in his honor. One of them was in Korea in 2004. And in 2019, there was also a conference in American Chemical Society symposium to honor him as well. He has mentored over 133 successful PhD students and 55 postdocs. And also he has also mentored many visiting professors. Most of his students are now having key distinguished positions in academia, in the industry, and the government. He has also received a lot of awards, and I'll just mention just a few of them. One of the major awards that he received was the Schrödinger Medal. If anyone know about the Schrödinger. And also, he also received the American Chemical Society Award in Pure Chemistry in 1979, and a gold medal from the American Institute of Chemists, and it's an honor shared by Nobel laureates as well. He has been awarded 31 honorary degrees from institutions around the world, and most importantly, he's a man of faith who takes his faith seriously. So, without much ado, I want us to give a warm welcome to Dr. Schaefer.
Thank you, Desmond. We had a nice ride over here in Uber, and he and I have corresponded a bit in the last few days as well. So I landed in Heathrow about 5 hours ago. I got a good sleep on the plane, so that will not be excuse if this fails. I'm here, paid for by the Royal Society of Chemistry. You should have all your events paid for by the Royal Society of Chemistry. One of their journals is called Physical Chemistry, Chemical Physics, and I'm one of the editors of that journal, and we meet once or twice a year here. Now, Desmond has told me to speak for 30 minutes. This lecture goes for an hour and a half. I'm going to have to be very, very selective and leave out one of the parts that you would definitely like the best. Now, let's get started. This is where we work. This is a building constructed just for research in computational quantum chemistry. Wonderful place to work, and here are the people that do the work. These are my PhD students and a couple of undergraduates as well. So it's a wonderful group of young people to work with, and anything you see my name on it is due to one or more of these students. Okay. Yes. I'm going to begin with some general, I'm not going to tell you very much about my life because Desmond has not given me much time. But let me make a few general comments, which may actually, he's given me this long list of questions I'm supposed to answer. And I need to be back before midnight, so I'll be ready for my meeting tomorrow morning. But just a few general comments. Schrödinger has been mentioned, founder of wave mechanics, originator of Schrödinger equation, describing quantum behavior of electrons and molecules. And this is a statement by Schrödinger which is good. I teach a course at my university with the title C.S. Lewis, Science and Scientism. Scientism is a word that C.S. Lewis uses, especially in his space trilogy. It means that nothing but science. Nothing but science. Nothing else is of any value at all except science and scientific measurements. And Schrödinger says that's not true. He says, I'm astonished. Scientific picture of the real world around me is very deficient. In other words, less than good. It gives a lot of factual information, puts all our experience in a magnificently consistent order, but it is silent about everything that is really near to our hearts, that really matters to us. Science can't tell us a word about red and blue, bitter and sweet, physical pain, physical delight. It knows nothing of beauty and ugly, good or bad, God and eternity. And then this is an interesting question. Science, and you hear people doing this all the time, begins with Richard Dawkins and then down from there. Science sometimes pretends to answer questions in these domains, these questions of meaning and beauty and good. But the answers are very often so silly that we're not inclined to take them seriously. That's from an old book. This is going to answer one of your questions. See, I've been studying these questions. I only got them yesterday, but I've been studying these questions. And one of the questions is, why should a scientist believe in God? Isn't that one of them? Yeah. And Eugene Wigner, Nobel Prize winner in physics, a Christian, once noted what he called the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. Now, I have had students who insisted that mathematics was not unreasonably effective. But it wasn't the problem with the mathematics, it was that they weren't very good at mathematics. The unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics, Wigner remarked, the miracle of the appropriateness of the language of mathematics for the formulation of the laws of physics is a wonderful gift that we can neither understand nor deserve. Now, when there's a gift, there's a giver, and obviously in the mind of Wigner, the giver was God. So, yes, how can physics and chemistry and mathematics explain things so well and make predictions about things before they happen? It's because it's all part of God's plan. Rick Smalley was a dear friend of mine, father of nanotechnology, Nobel Prize in Chemistry, 1996. We were good friends. He was very outspoken as an atheist. I was not secretive about being a believer in Jesus. And when we met, Smalley would say to me, Schaefer, are you still a Christian? I said, yes. Smalley, you're still an atheist? He said, of course. And that's the way these conversations went on for years until about 5 years before he passed, and things changed in a remarkable way. Smalley says this, recently I've gone back to church regularly, First Baptist Church Second Baptist Church in Houston, Texas. He hadn't been to church in 40 years. Recently I've gone back to church, but with a new focus to understand as best I can what is it that makes Christianity so vital and powerful in the lives of billions of people today. Even though almost 2,000 years have passed since the death and resurrection of Christ. Although I suspect I will never fully understand, I now think the answer is very simple. It is true. Rick Smalley, renowned atheist. At his funeral ceremony in a huge church in Houston, many atheists came, and they were able to speak about how such a change had occurred in Rick Smalley's life. Charles Towns, professor of physics at Berkeley, Nobel Prize in Physics 64, discovered the laser. I overlapped with Charles Towns quite a bit. When I was an undergraduate at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the greatest nerd school in the universe. Yes, I am a nerd. Unapologetic nerd. He had already done the work for which he was going to get the Nobel Prize. He got the Nobel Prize while he was at MIT, but he wasn't doing any science at MIT. He was the provost, which is the #2 officer in the university. Well, he did that for a couple of years. He hated it. He said, this is just horrible being administrator. So he moved to Berkeley 3 years before I got there to become the most famous member of the faculty. And this is from a book of his called Making Waves. Now, the waves are the lasers, okay? He's not saying that he's so important. He talks about making lasers. And he says this, in my view, the question of origin, and that's something on your list. On your list, Desmond. Has anybody else seen this list? Well, if I answer all these questions, we're going to be here till midnight, I'll tell you. This is going to go on for a long time. Charles Towns says, in my view, the question of origin seems always left unanswered if we explore from a scientific view alone. Thus, I believe there's a need for some religious, metaphysical explanation. I believe in the concept of God and in his existence. Charles Towns was quite outspoken as a Christian. William Phillips, a good bit younger, Nobel Prize in '97 for the development of methods to trap and cool atoms with laser light. There are a lot of these people who are these scientists who are Christians who are laser people and nano people. The day he got the Nobel Prize, he said this at a conference. God has given us an incredibly fascinating world to live in and explore. News conference where he was participating in a conference on high-powered telescopes, and that's on the first page of the London Times. If you turn to page 8, it gives more information about the story, and it shows that he is a member of a multiracial church in Gaithersburg, Maryland, about 20 miles north of Washington, D.C., teaches Sunday school and leads Bible studies. And if you keep reading, you find out one thing about his life that I think is fascinating. Every Saturday afternoon, he and his wife drive into downtown Washington, D.C., and pick up an 80-year-old African-American lady who's blind. And they take her out, and they do her shopping for her for a week, and they take her to dinner, and then they think, well, that's ideal. Saturday Night Live for Phillips and his wife. And I think it shows you some genuineness. This lecture has 5 parts. Coming-of-age story. The love story is the best part of this, and you're not going to get it. It takes 10 minutes, and we'll have to use up some of that that question time Desmond gave. Story of faith, story of international scientific collaboration. You're not going to get that either. That won't fit. There's a lot of this stuff that won't fit. Okay, so I was born in Michigan. My parents were not Christians. Both were graduates of the University of Michigan. We moved to Syracuse, New York for a few years. I don't remember much except there's a lot of snow in Syracuse, New York. And at that age, I loved it. I no longer enjoy snow. Then to the promised land, Silicon Valley, Menlo Park, California. We lived right next to Stanford University. It was just a great place for a kid to grow up. The Stanford campus is just beautiful. I'll say more about that in a little bit. Now, so what am I? 14 years old. Moving from the promised land, Silicon Valley, back to Michigan, where my parents came from. I had not given much thought to deep questions such as some of these. Is there anything beyond the universe we know? That's one of your questions. Y'all don't know. He's given me 25 questions. They're dense. They're dense. Is there anything beyond the universe we know? Is there a purpose to the universe? That's not one of your questions. Is there a purpose to human life? That's not one of your questions either. Does God exist? That's one of your questions. Is there life after death? That's involved in one of your questions. I'm ready for these questions. These slides were made up a couple months ago. I'm ready, Desmond. I'm not ready for all of them, but we'll see. He's going to have to be selective about which of these questions he asks me. So I'm in Michigan. 5 years, went to high school there. It was okay. And that is part of the love story that you're not going to get. Sorry. Age 17, I'm in high school, American high school. Beginning to think seriously about ultimate questions. This began a search that led 11 years later to my becoming a Christian. So there's a long delta T time interval here. I did begin to read the Bible at age 17, a chapter a day. You'll get through the Bible in 4 years at that rate. I did this for 2 reasons. I was completely ignorant of the Bible, let me say that first. I knew it was the most important book. I mean, I'd heard that from many sources. And I didn't know much about Jesus, but I was convinced that he was unlike anybody I'd ever met or read about. So here I am reading the Bible. My father wanted me either to go to Stanford University, we lived right next to it for 5 years, beautiful campus, lovely place, or MIT, the great nerd school of the university. My father was a civil engineer, so he was not a nerd, though. I really do have nerd qualifications. In my first year in high school, I tried out for the basketball team. I was the second tallest kid in the whole high school. I couldn't make the basketball team for 2 fundamental reasons. I couldn't jump and I couldn't run. I am a nerd. Now, if we come back to the love story, that'll figure that out. I wanted to be a nerd, except we both went to MIT. So here I'm at MIT for 4 years. The MIT campus, has anybody been there? Has anybody been to MIT? Oh, thank goodness, it's so ugly. The campus is this is the only good-looking building on the campus. The Great Dome, the library is right underneath it. I spent many hours there. all the rest of the buildings are just very ugly. The main building is about a half mile long. It looks much more like a prison than a university building. They've built a lot of new buildings since then. They're equally ugly. It's just a horrible, horrible campus, visually. First 2 years, well, first year was a little disappointing. Grades only average. I was used to being a good student. But the second year, a remarkable transformation took place. I became one of the best students at MIT. And I initially was very surprised. At the end of the first half of my second year, I thought that I couldn't have possibly gotten these grades. They don't belong to me. But eventually, I came to realize that many of my classmates at MIT had come from all science high schools. All they studied was science high schools, such as the Bronx School of Science in New York City, which has produced 16 Nobel Prize winners. My educational background was much weaker. More than half of these students at MIT, all the courses they were taking the first year, they'd already had them. It was just a review, and they were knocking it dead. Well, I'd not had them, and I was not knocking it dead. But it took me a year to catch up, and that was good. So, and I'm sure teachers, we're going to skip these. I have to say something about George Whitesides. George Whitesides is the most highly cited scientist in the world. He's gone from organometallic chemistry to nano and everything in between. He does medicine things now too. He was, during my second year at MIT, I was in organic chemistry lab. And I won't say that I was bad in the lab, but I was slow getting things done. And one day, I was in the lab at the bench, one nerd on this side, another nerd on this side, and my flask begins to smell rather badly. And the two nerds said, "You really should take that over to the hood." The hood, but there's a place where you put things that are dangerous. It didn't bother me. I said, chemistry makes smells. Nothing to worry about. And they said, well, why aren't ours smelling then, since we're all supposed to be doing the same thing? Then it became very hot. And even I realized it was time to take the hood. Enormous explosion. Well, Whitesides, super famous now, he was in charge of the lab. He came walking down the hall and looked at me and said, Schaefer, this one event by you has used up all the laboratory fees for the entire year this year. And I said, I'm sorry. And then he made this remarkable statement that predicted my future. Seeing that I was a bit efficient in the lab, he said, Schaefer, have you ever considered theoretical chemistry? I didn't know there's any such thing as theoretical chemistry. That's what I've been doing all my life since then. So he predicted my future. This is, it's part of the love story. Sorry, not going to get it. Not going to get it. No. Not even going to see her picture. No. It's such a good story. We decided to go to Stanford for reasons which are part of the love story, which I can't tell you. So I was there for 2.5 years, and my boss, Frank Harris, moved to the University of Utah. So I needed to graduate in a hurry. That's the Stanford Memorial Church, probably the most visible feature of the campus. It's got a picture up at the top of Jesus and his closest friends. It's the end of Has anybody been to Stanford University? That is a beautiful campus. You should go there. That's a beautiful campus. Many thousands of acres. Teachers at Stanford, we won't talk about any of these. No, I had to graduate in a hurry. Now, this is an important date in my life. Easter Sunday, 1969. My wife and I attended, in the U.S., you're expected to be church, Christmas, that used to be true in the U.K. as well. I don't know if it's still true. It's not so true in the U.S. as it was, but at that point, if you were a civilized person, you had to show up, make an appearance. A beautiful little redwood church right across from the Stanford Linear Accelerator. Just a wonderful church. And the minister opened his speech by words which have deeply influenced my life. And here's what he said. He said, he was an English person, His name was John Burns. He was from England. He was just over in the U.S. for a little while. He said the Christian faith, actually what he said is that the Christian faith is a sham if Jesus Christ did not rise physically from the dead. I was stunned by that statement. I stayed around, which required a little bit of, I had to keep back. A lot of people wanted to talk to him after Easter Sunday service. Anyway, the others left. My wife and I were there, and I said, Mr. Burns, do you really believe? I said, that first sentence of your message really struck me. Do you really believe that's true? And he said, yes, I do. He said to me, do you believe it's true? So I don't know. I haven't given serious thought before. He said, you should, and suggested some things to read, which I didn't immediately pounce on, but in time, be patient. So that was, still searching. Beginning that day, I did begin to consider the historical evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I'm still 4 years away from becoming a Christian. 4 years to go. Well, I become a professor. Okay, I needed to graduate. I graduated. Interviewed for faculty positions at MIT, Berkeley, and Harvard, and went to Berkeley. A great offer from what was then the most outstanding chemistry department in the world. When I left, it sunk a little bit. Back to number one now. They obviously didn't need me that much. And I accepted at age 24. I became the youngest professor on the Berkeley campus. But this I can't skip. I replaced a person who became much more famous than I. Mathematics professor. He had begun 2 years earlier at the age of 24. He'd been the youngest professor at Berkeley for the 2 years before I. He left. Now, he had some problems. He hated students. It was reciprocal. They hated him. He hated faculty. It was reciprocal. They hated him. So after 2 years there, he told the dean, I'm sorry, but this isn't my kind of place. I'm going somewhere else. And the dean begged him to stay. He said, Kaczynski, we'll put you in an ivory tower. You will never be bothered by another student or another faculty member. Just do your mathematics and get the Fields Prize. The Fields Medal is equivalent to the Nobel Prize in mathematics. He said, nope, I'm going. That's what he looked like when he was at Berkeley. Clean-cut man, 24 years old. A few years later, doesn't look so good. He becomes the Unabomber. Oh, it's not funny for the people that were involved, but his bomb murdered 3 professors and did great damage to many others. We can talk about him. You can find movies about him if you're interested in him. I replaced him. Okay, so here I am. I'm there for 18 years with a better result than Kaczynski had. Mathematics is just right across the road from us, though, so it wasn't close. Here's the campus living in Berkeley. It's a beautiful campus, right from Telegraph Avenue. Now, that's going to have to wait too. We're not going to talk about chemistry. That's going to wait. Sorry. Okay, so see, they've got a lot of other things they could ask for. But the love story is the best. During my 3rd year on the faculty, historical evidence compelled me to accept the truth of the physical resurrection of Jesus Christ. I finally understood that the resurrection of Christ is one of the best attested facts in all of ancient history. Took another year before I received Jesus Christ into my life. A number of things began to change. My life had a purpose, which was to know Christ and to make Him known. I teach this C.S. Lewis class, and one of the books of his that I like is C.S. Lewis wrote an autobiography of the first half of his life. It's called Surprised by Joy. Anybody read it? It's pretty good. It's pretty good. He talks about this concept of joy, and that's what happened to me when Jesus came into my life, joy arrived, and it's never left. Berkeley faculty, 86, a whole bunch of Nobel Prizes there. We don't have time to talk about them. Colleagues at Berkeley, wonderful, wonderful friends there. I still go back. It's been a long time since I was a professor there. I still go back. Still have a lot of friends there. I went to the University of Texas for a year. That was a year of rebellion. But I went back. I had a great position there. Went back. Berkeley doubled my salary. I went back. Then I moved to the University of Georgia in 1987, which is a pretty neat place, actually. We have a lot of people from England that come visit us. I have a great position there. I showed you the building they built for us. My wife and I had 4 young children. Actually, when we moved to Georgia, our youngest was 9 years old. Wanted to live in a quieter place than Berkeley, Athens, Georgia. This is a great college town. Okay, in America, we have college towns. I don't think you have anything quite like that.
Oxford,
Yeah,
Cambridge.
Cambridge is more like a college town. Yeah, like a college town. And this is the main student street. It's so cool. I won't talk about my colleagues there. I don't think I'm going to talk about this either. But in fact, I'm getting ready to finish this. Yeah, he said a half hour. I've got 3 minutes to go. One of the great joys in the life of a scientist is the ability to travel and collaborate with scientists in many countries, and we've done that. I'm approaching 200 trips to Europe now. I've never paid for one. Oh, let's take that back. Oh, I'm speaking to this. This doesn't work, does it?
This online.
Yeah. Okay. I've been to Europe many, many times. I only paid for my airfare once when I came as a student. And still coming. That's a beautiful place where my wife and I try to get every summer. Sils Maria, Switzerland, way up in the mountains. In recent years, we've spent a lot of summers in Munich. Before that, we spent a lot of summers in Zurich at the ETH, the Swiss Federal University of Science and Technology. But more recently, another 10 years there, I'm visiting professor there in the research group of a close friend at the so-called LMU, Ludwig Maximilians University. It really is the best. Why do we go to why do I go to places like this? And the ETH in Zurich is the best also, because we want to get the best science. I want to learn the most I can from the colleagues in these different universities. Many, many trips to China. The Great Wall is there. I've had 2 research institutes. I started in China, Australia, many trips there. There's the Harbor Bridge and the Opera House. I don't have time to talk about that. Many trips to India. Yeah, this goes on and on. And that, let's see, what comes after that? Africa, yeah. Oh, South America. I'm taking my wife to South America in January for a few days. We have this Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, and she's a teacher, and so she gets a couple of days off, and she skips one day, and we go to. Oh, you don't want to hear about citations? No, not today. We've got better things to talk about. So I think I have used my 30 minutes, and I will say that part is over.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schaefer. Well, can we give him another applause? I think many of those who are here will agree that they want to hear your life story. Yeah, it seems like I'm a bad person trying to cut off his life story. Yeah. So can you tell us maybe within 5 minutes about your life story?
It shouldn't take much more than that. Yeah, I have to get back to it. It begins when I'm in high school. I was a very young student and a nerd. I'm very early in life. Back there. Look at there. Yeah, that takes longer than I wanted it to. And that too. I left out the science. We left out a bunch of stuff here. We didn't leave Ted Kaczynski out. Getting there. Calculus is extremely valuable. It is. Don't. Oh, I went too far back. Yeah. Gotta get back here. I'm getting there. Oh, there it is. Okay, 16 years old. That's a long time ago. In America, we have these things called study halls. Probably if you've seen enough trashy American movies, you've seen something about a study hall. It's a place where all the students go who don't have lectures they have to take, and they're supposed to sit and study. So I was in the study hall. A beautiful girl from the grade below mine walked up to the auditorium stage to sharpen her pencil. I remember it to this day. It was sad. It was sad. She did not appear at all like someone to be attracted to a nerd such as I. I've already established my nerd credentials, right, Desmond?
Yeah.
Beautiful girls like this all wanted to date guys on the football team. Well, much later turned out that she did not date guys on the football team, but that's coming. Anyway, this was sad that anybody could be that beautiful in the presence of a nerd like me. Calculus is extremely difficult. So, nerds are smart. They're nerdy, but they are smart. This beautiful girl and her best friend Peggy Hicks lived out in the country, and they would drive in right past my house. Now, from my house, this is high school, I could sneak around the lake and get to the high school very quickly. But when it started to snow a lot, it dawned on me that these two girls were right by my house on the way to school. That if we had a snowstorm, and I looked like I was going to school in the conventional way on the road, maybe they might take pity on me, and they did. And I got to know both of them. Now Peggy Hicks was in love with me, but it wasn't mutual. It was the other girl who was much more beautiful, Karen Rasmussen. I got to know her. Okay, well, this goes on, and I would say we became friends. I mean, I thought it pretty neat that somebody that beautiful would make a friend of a nerd. In her she went to a different college from me. In her first year, just after Christmas, she sends me a letter telling me about all she's doing at her small college or university. And she signs it, "Your Wells Bell Carmen." The name of her college was Wells. She was calling me her Bell. I said, "Wow, this looks promising." Well, it gets better because calculus is extremely valuable. I get home for the summer, and I'm doing the kind of things that nerds would like to do. I'm taking second-year German at a local college near my home in Michigan because I've taken so many nerd courses. I got behind on some of the requirements, and I'm studying to advanced place third-year calculus. First-year calculus, it was kind of rough for me because of my background, but second-year calculus, I knocked it out, got an 8, and I was going to study third-year calculus at home so I wouldn't have to take it when I got back to my tent, take a test and pass it. I'm loving it. I'm working problems. This is nerd's delight. She calls me on the phone. Now, y'all are not of this generation. Back then, young women did not call young men on the telephone. It was not considered in good form at all. So I'm shocked already by she tells me who she is. And then she asked me, "Do you know anything about calculus?" This story is true, but it's too good to be true. I said, "I actually know a lot about calculus. I've had 2 years and I'm studying right now and just loving third year calculus." He said, "Well, maybe you can help my family." I said, "Tell me about it." And she says, "Well, my brother Eric. My brother Eric, a couple years ahead of me, and he didn't even study in high school. He went to a college, didn't study there either. And in his third year at college, he decides he's going to go to medical school. Well, this is obviously absurd because his record is so bad. So he applies to the University of Michigan. His father was a very famous physician in Western, did the first open heart surgery in Western Michigan. And he thought, because his father was a famous surgeon, he'd get into the University of Michigan. Well, he did not get into the University of Michigan. And so her father called the dean there and said, what's the deal? My son didn't get into the University of Michigan. And the dean said, well, give me a little time, I'll look this over. He calls him back half hour later and says, Dr. Rasmussen, have you ever looked at the academic record of your son? He isn't even close to being acceptable. Much though we love you, we can't do it. So he applies to Wayne State University, which is a much lower ranked university medical school. He doesn't get in there either. His father calls, same conversation, and the same result. But then in this conversation, the dean of medical school at Wayne State said, but Dr. Rasmussen, if we will take your son for the master's degree in anatomy, and if he does a good job, we'll let him into our medical school. And that's what they did. So he's on his way to the anatomy program at Wayne State, but he's got to take the calculus course to get in. He has started to take calculus at Grand Rapids Junior College, probably the easiest calculus class you could ever imagine, and he's failed the first 2 quizzes. So she calls me and says, can you help us? I said, well, maybe. What should I do? She said, well, come over. And I said, when? She said, now. I was motivated. I got into my little motor scooter. I was there in a hurry. Well, I was tutoring him for 49 days in a row. I mean, this was desperate. And he got a D on his 3rd quiz, C in 4th, B in, he got a B in the course, and he was admitted to the anatomy program at Wayne State University. Well, I'm over there, and we're friends already. And so we would hang around for an hour or so and talk about things at her home. And by the end of the summer, things were different. Now, yeah, okay, I've told you this story already. Now, she was a year behind me. The year I left and was off at MIT, being a nerd, she became the homecoming queen. Have you seen enough movies, you know what the homecoming queen is? Come on, you've got to know what the homecoming queen is. The most beautiful girl in the school. We all knew that already. So she became the homecoming queen, which made her even more distant from a nerd. Now, I'm thinking about graduate studies, and Caltech, California Institute of Tech, second best nerd school in the universe, or Stanford, where I'd lived right next to it. Loved campus for my PhD studies, chemical physics. Initially, I chose Caltech. I mean, where would a nerd go? I mean, I'd seen enough of Boston. Oh, who's from Boston? Yes, people from Boston. Boston is great, but I was a poor graduate student. Anything that was nice about Boston, I never saw. I was just in the library all the time with the other nerds. But I'd done Boston, and I was going to be poor for another 3 or 4 years. So I had accepted Caltech, but the professor from Stanford called me up. This is big time recruiting. He said, Shaker, why haven't you accepted our offer? We made you the best offer Stanford University can. And I said, well, I already accepted at Caltech. And he said, that's too bad. And I said, well, but let's talk about that a little bit. I've been, this idea of being 3,000 kilometers away from this most wonderful woman in the world does it for a year. That was the plan. We're going to wait a year and get married. I said, it doesn't really sound that great. She didn't think it sounded that great either. We talked about this. And I said, I've looked into Caltech. Her major is art history. Caltech doesn't even have a single course in art history, not a major. By this time, her father's getting involved in this. They say she can get married as long as she graduates from a good university. And so I'm telling this Stanford professor, he said, Schaefer, do you know Stanford University has one of the best art history programs in the universe? I said, no. And he said, you think your fiancée would like to come here? I said, well, she might. And then he asked me the big question, is she smart? I mean, Stanford University is very prestigious. I said, she's much smarter than I am. That's not it. She said, have her send me her transcript. Now, back then, there wasn't any email. It takes a week to get over there. He calls me back 2 weeks later and says she's in. All she has to do is show up, and she can do her senior year at Stanford University. So, wow. MIT nerd marries the homecoming queen. I gave this talk in Montevideo, Uruguay, a year or two ago, and they didn't know who the homecoming queen was, but one of them had seen a lot of American movies and said to the rest that means princess. Now, my wife did not like being the homecoming queen. She hated it. She did not like all that attention. But I said, well, how about being a princess? And she said, that's much better. That's much better. There's again, the picture. Have I been lying to y'all? And I'm a nerd. Unbelievable. There we are getting married. She is looking, oh, wow. And she is still just that beautiful. She's looking gorgeous. And I'm looking like a nerd. Yes. Oh, wow. It was somewhat of a scandal that the homecoming queen would marry the nerd. In fact, I was lined up in front of the church, and as she is walking down the aisle, I hear some people whispering, "She wouldn't." And then as we're walking out together, hand in hand, on the other side of the church, she did. So we left Michigan pretty quickly, went to California. Yeah, and that is the story.
Wow. Thank you so much. So we're going to do our Q&A. Oh, thank you. We're going to do our Q&A, and we have, just like Professor Schaefer has been saying, we have lots of questions here. But we'll give priority to those who are here. If you have any question at all that you want to ask, just feel free and just raise up your hands. And okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schaefer. I'm not fully figuring this question out, so bear with me. But I was wondering, have you, over your time, have you seen an evolution or a change in the objections raised against theism or Christianity in particular? A background to that is I kind of went to university, not too long ago, went to university where the hard questions were like, does that make empirical sense to believe in a scientific world? Does it make empirical sense to believe in a God that does all the things in the Bible? I left the university with most of my folks in my maths degree thinking, actually, they would identify themselves as spiritual or kind of more agnostic rather than your hard atheism, as I had known going into university. So curious, what your experience has been?
Very good question. I think there has been some motion. I debated Steven Weinberg in Texas in the year 2000. Weinberg, the most famous physicist of the last third of the 20th century, the existence of God, and I smashed him. It wasn't even close. And my talk was all about the Christian origins of science, all the pioneers of modern science being, or virtually all of them being Christians, and a great many today being Christians. And in his, when the questions came up, somebody asked him, and of course, a whole part of the lore against Christianity is it's impossible to be a scientist and Christian. So the fact that there are so many of them that are is a little embarrassing. So somebody asked Weinberg, well, how do you account for the fact that so many of these scientists were Christians and so many are Christians? And he said, I understand that. He was, golly, he must have been 75 years old at the time. He said, you know, as you get older, your friends and family start to pass away. And he almost shed tears. I mean, he was moved. I was in the front row looking right at him. He was moved. And he said, so I understand that. They want to pretend there's something ahead of them. That's it. Now, never met a scientist who's a Christian who's mostly interested in pretending there's something ahead of him. So I didn't really agree with that statement, but that's how he dealt with it. That's part of my answer is that there is a recognition that science seems to be uniquely Christian in its backgrounds and to a significant degree in the present. And I think atheists are coming to grips with that as well. So they don't make such rash statements as you might have heard in the past. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask you a question from this. As a Christian, how do you approach scientific discoveries that challenge traditional interpretation of Scripture?
Can I see that? I'll repeat it. As a Christian, how do you approach scientific discoveries that challenge traditional interpretations of Scripture? Okay. Well, I don't think there are any, for starters, but there are things that, we're going to get into this question of evolution, I'm sure. You know, chemists, physicists, and mathematicians, lots and lots of Christians among them. Biologists, the crowd is thinner. We have wonderful, in my university and every unit, there are wonderful, very distinguished biologists. Francis Collins, head of the Human Genome Project, who are Christians. But I would say that the fraction is smaller in biology departments, and they would say it's because of evolution. Now, I guess what I need to say here is that among Christians, there is a whole range of ideas about evolution. One can name a bunch. Recent creation would say that the universe and our planet are no more than 10,000 years old. That's not my position, but if it's true, then my response would be at some later date that God must have created the universe with apparent age. So that's one position, recent creation. Another position, we might call it old earth creationism. It's a recognition that God, this is my position, that God created the universe 13.7 billion years ago, this planet 4.7 billion years ago, and that's historical. Now, where my position would come under some criticism is I do believe that Adam and Eve were the first human beings from whom all of us are descended. And I think they were created by fiat, de novo. Third position, theistic evolution, might be a position that many of you hold. The idea is that same thing about the age of the universe, the age of the earth. They would have a range of positions within theistic evolution on Adam and Eve. Some would say that Adam and Eve were real persons created de novo. Others would say that Adam and Eve were not real people, that this story is figurative. And then, above all of those, we have atheism. So a bunch of different views are possible. I've said a little bit about my view. What's the next question?
Thank you. So since
people may want to ask about that, they certainly can.
Since we are talking about evolution, and so how do you, if the universe is 13.7 billion years old, while according to the Bible is about 6,000, 10,000, how do you reconcile the biblical interpretation that people have with the scientific interpretation?
Yes, so the position of the old earth creationists is that the days in Genesis 1 are indefinite periods of time. And, that's what it is. And I think that's the right understanding. Many people have written about this. Hugh Ross from Caltech has written about this. John Lennox from Oxford University has written about it. I've written about this. I did not bring a copy of my book with me, which is sad, but I can send Desmond a few copies if anybody's interested. My book is, the title of my book may be on one of these slides if we ever get there.
It should be on this slide.
Yeah, it should be on a slide, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I think this is a straightforward question. Does God and science contradict?
No. God created not only human beings, but all the laws of physics and mathematics, and he made the whole thing so it can't be contradicted by anything he made.
Is there any other question in the audience before I move to the next one? Yes.
Yeah. One of the, I realize this is a massive generalization. I think one of the key takeaways of Newtonian physics is that the universe is ordered and predictable. And with quantum physics, that introduces a lot more of, if you like, of a chaotic worldview. How do you understand that? And do you think what, if any, is the significance of God writing quantum physics into the small scale of the universe?
That's a good question. So quantum physics is what I do for a living. So if I can't answer that one, I'm in bad trouble. I don't think that quantum mechanics produces a chaos in the universe. I don't think there's anything that ever happened that God didn't see in detail in advance. Now, what quantum mechanics does do is it does move things into views of probability. Okay? So if we want to measure the dipole moment of the water molecule, and all of you should be deeply concerned about this because your bodies are some big fraction of water. The dipole moment, the fundamental measurement of the polarity, for those two hydrogen atoms and an oxygen atom in the middle, it's a polar molecule. It's more positively charged on one side, more negatively charged on the other. If one wants to measure that, the answers from quantum mechanics, if one wants to understand that, if you measure it, you get a particular value. Okay? What quantum mechanics tells you is that there are certain probabilities of different values of that dipole moment. It's 1.84 Debye units. You all ought to know that by heart. It's a very important number. The probability, but now there are other states of the water molecule than the ground state. There are excited vibrational states, excited rotational states, excited electronic states. All these excited states will have slightly different values of the dipole moment of the water molecule. So you won't, every single time you make the measurement, you won't get the value that applies to the ground state. But if the water molecule is at 5 degrees Kelvin, like really close to absolute zero, the probability of measuring 1.84 Debyes is 99.99999 until you can keep saying nines until you get to breakfast tomorrow morning. That's what you're going to get at a low temperature. Now, you raise the temperature and you have a distribution of these things. And what quantum mechanics will tell you is that room temperature, here we are at room temperature, what fraction of all those measurements will give particular values. So, yeah, there is some uncertainty, but I don't think it's chaos. I mean, it's understandable, I think.
Thank you for that. Moving on to ethics. How do you see the role of faith in ethical decision making within scientific advancement, such as AI or technology?
AI is here. We do it. Machine learning, we're pretty good at it. It's helpful. I don't think it, it provides a way to predict things which we couldn't otherwise do. AI is just pattern recognition, really. You put all kinds of information into a computer and it can give you a certain information. It's being used in American football now. The team gets the ball at a certain point, and should they kick it or should they play with it? They've got this all figured out by AI. Every possible yard line that you could be on, all these things, it tells you what to do. And apparently they're doing that now. I saw an event over the weekend in which one of the teams kept playing the ball when they should have kicked it away. Well, they made a big mistake, but that's what AI told them to do. I don't think it's threatening. I mean, there's nothing AI can do that we don't understand, I guess is what I would say.
What will be the role of faith in ethical decision, like in advance of technology? Do you think that there's a position of faith to say this is good or this is bad?
There certainly can be. I mean, I'm not a biologist, but I would not, if I were, I wouldn't want to do experiments on unborn children, even though it may be that they'll be aborted shortly thereafter. I wouldn't feel good about that. Human beings are beautifully and wonderfully made. So that's a case where I would have reservations. A lot of people that are not Christians wouldn't want to do that either, though. I'm not saying I'm alone in that, but I would say, yeah, I mean, ethics come from God, and what we know is in the Bible.
So the next question will be, but before I move on to the next, is there any other question in the audience before I move on? Yes.
There was something in your PowerPoint presentation that you skipped over about accepting faith into your life in your 30s. Can you expand a little bit on that and how that happened?
Yeah, I was 28 when Jesus Christ came into my life, and I do have something here on that. It's going to take a while to find it, though. It was 28. I was in my fourth year as a professor at Berkeley. I was doing okay. I did this great scientific thing, which you didn't have time for. It's too bad. It's so good. Yeah, I wish I knew how to get through these things faster, but I'm getting there. I've got myself at Georgia now. I'm traveling all over the world. I like to travel, especially to see beautiful things. Now, I've told you that my wife studied art history, and that's good because we're not going to talk about citations. Okay, we are going to do this. She likes to go to museums, and I go with her. Although my approach to the museum is a little bit different than hers. I go to the bookstore first, and I have all these postcards about the famous things, and I say, oh, I know about that one. I've seen that one before, and that one, and that one. And I pick 4 or 5 of these things, buy the postcards, and wander around the museum trying to find them. And when I find one, I stare at it for about 10, 15 minutes, like in the Uffizi. You know, they got Venus on the half shell, and right next to it, Primavera by Botticelli. And I could look at those things for a long time. But then when I'm done, I find a comfortable place and take a nap. Well, my wife is looking very carefully at everything in the museum, and I'm always behind on my sleep, so it's a good combination. Anyway, let's talk. This is going to get us into your question. Okay, it may not seem like I'm getting there, but let's talk about what happened to me. Okay, and I think that this is from Michelangelo. It's on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Anybody been there? Yes. Okay. Now we're getting some people are eager to get into this. It's hard staring up at that thing for a long time, isn't it? Yeah, it's really hard. They need beds in that, so you can just lie down and enjoy it instead of looking up there so hard. But I think the essence of this, the creation of Adam, as Michelangelo called it, is initiative, namely God's initiative. I think the initiative, the beginning, comes from God. And God offers a beautiful life to every human being, a beautiful, wonderful life, not only now, a joyful life, which is what he gave me, but on in through eternity. So that initiative, to me, is tremendously important. However, there is a problem. This is Hieronymus Bosch. This is a dreadful painting. I'm glad you can't see much of it. This is showing every form of human depravity imaginable. And what did Hieronymus Bosch call it? He called it the garden of earthly delights. I mean, anything bad that human beings can do to each other, they're all there. And I think this does point to a separation of human beings from God. And it's all about selfishness. You know, each one of us, I hate to say this, believes that the universe revolves around us. Some of you agree with that and some don't. Everybody here and everybody everywhere else believes that the universe revolves around us. We may think there are some artificial distinctions otherwise that are made, but we really think we're the center of it. And this selfishness, it comes with humankind. It's there, and not always expressed in things as bad as this. Don't get me wrong, but this problem of selfishness, or sin, as the Bible calls it, it's universal, and we know it's not right. We know it's not right. Pride, selfishness, arrogance, these are all problems that have challenged me and perhaps some of you as well. So there's this separation. Oops, that's not the one that goes forward. I'm confusing these two devices for each other. And there's a solution. This is Christ of St. John at the Cross. This is by Salvador Dali. So this is a much more recent painting. Some of you know Dali's paintings, but I know I like this one. It's very good. And the solution is the death of Jesus Christ on the cross. What does it accomplish? For every person that gives their life to Jesus, it accomplishes the forgiveness of all that selfishness that we have. I think there's less of me than there was before I became a Christian, but it hadn't all gone away. But it is going to go away eventually. His death on the cross paid the penalty for all of my selfishness, all of my failures. Now, where does that leave us? Where did it leave me when I was 28 years old? With a necessary response. This is Rembrandt, the Return of the Lost Son, and each of us is in some way like that. We have to run to Jesus. We have to run to Jesus, confess that we have failed and continue to fail, and ask him forgiveness for all our sins and be a part of his family. So this is what happened to me when I was 28 years old.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So since you are talking about the new creation, what role will science play in the new creation? Do you think there's a role that science will play in the new creation?
I think Desmond has asked me, what role will science play in heaven? And my answer to that is, I don't know. I think it's going to be exciting, and there are going to be challenges for everybody in heaven. I think it's going to be wonderful. I mean, the Apostle Paul said no human mind has ever imagined or seen what wonderful things God has prepared for those who love the Lord. And is science a part of that? Could be. There may be new discoveries in heaven. One of your questions there, which is coming right after this, is heaven part of our universe? That's one of the ones on your list. I say I don't think so. I don't think so. And there's another question there about the multi-universe. Yeah, I think the multi-universe, the idea there. Now, the reason the multi-universe is helpful for atheists is because it explains how this planet got here. I mean, all the evidence is that this place is very unlikely to exist. We talked about the water molecules, dipole moment. If instead of 1.84 device for the dipole moment of water, we make it 1.85, King's College, any of the colleges in London where this planet doesn't exist, the fine-tuning, I mean, this is another reason for the existence of God. The fine-tuning of the universe is extraordinary. All physicists agree with this. There are lots of books on this subject, the privileged planet, all kinds of things. And how do you get around this if you don't believe in God? Well, you pretend that there are billions and billions and trillions and trillions and quadrillions of other universes. And so what if ours is extremely improbable? If there are enough of them, one would work. I don't think it's a very good argument, given that there's no evidence for other universes. I think heaven is outside this universe. If there are other universes, God made them. I'm not denying that other universes exist. I'm just saying the evidence isn't there yet. If there are other universes, God created them.
So would you say that there are limits to science then? Or how would you describe the limits of science?
Limits to science. I think there are limits to science. You're going to have to ask me more. You have to focus that question a little more. I'm certainly not one that would limit science. I do not have the flu. If you shake my hand, you're not going to get sick.
So in terms of talking about the existence of God and issues of evil, mid-mention of scientism, do you think that science can explain everything? Or there is a limit to science?
No, I don't think. If you're a believer in scientism, like Richard Dawkins, who says, love is very complicated computing equipment. Now, I tried this one out on my wife, and I said, sweetheart, how would you feel if I came home one night and said, love is some very complicated computing equipment? She didn't like this. She said, Fritz, here in Georgia, it's hot in the summer and cold in the winter, and I don't think you'd enjoy sleeping in the garage every night. So I don't think love can be explained in mathematical terms. No, I don't think science can. I don't want to put any limits on science, but I don't think science can explain everything.
If I move on to the next question, is there another question for? Oh, okay.
So you mentioned the process through which you went to realize why God created everything and the necessary response and everything. But what was the initial catalyst for it? It sure was something you were wondering about your entire life, but were there like specific moments you can point out that made you ask a lot of questions or like that got you a lot of answers?
Good question. I was never an atheist. I didn't know who God was or what that meant, anything of the sort, but I was never an atheist. I as far back as I can remember, I love nature. Okay, I'm a nature lover. My wife and I love to go to beautiful places, go on walks. We used to go on very strenuous hikes. We go on nice walks now. And just being out there and taking it all in, to me, the idea that it just happened was not tenable. So that was long before I became a Christian. Yesterday morning, my wife and I woke up in Watkinsville, Georgia, went out for a walk, saw a beautiful sunrise, a beautiful, beautiful sunrise coming right up over the trees. So I was never an atheist. Yeah. I always thought there was something. I just didn't have any idea what it was.
So I think the follow-up question will be, what made you move to Christianity and not any other religion to look for what that thing is? Why didn't you seek for it maybe in Islam or Buddhism, but you went to Scripture?
Good. Well, as I said, I knew nothing about Jesus growing up, but I had heard a few things. I'd heard a few things, and he seemed interesting. And I'd been told there's one book that told the story, and so at age 17, I said, I better look into this book. And I was looking into that book for 11 years before I became a Christian, but that was my curiosity about Jesus was what led me to begin reading the Bible one chapter a day for 11 years.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Within your field, what has been something that you've discovered or had privy to have like knowledge of that you think has been astounding in terms of the existence of God, or that like has supported your faith or encouraged your faith, or something that's just so beautiful or amazing that you're like, there has to be a God.
Okay, this is going to give me 5 minutes for science? Yes. Is that okay? Yeah. You know, it's embarrassing to say that my most important scientific discovery was made 54 years ago. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing, but true. Okay, now, so I'll tell that story. That's just a 5-minute story. You had to get a little bit of chemistry in this. So there we are. Yes. 1970, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry is going to be given out tomorrow. We'll see what happens. I think the ship has sailed in my case. I think there was a good chance 10 years ago. I think the ship has sailed, but we'll see. Anyway, 71 Nobel Prize in Hertzberg, in chemistry, Gerhard Hertzberg from Ottawa, Canada. This is how the Nobel citation read. Hertzberg's contributions are to the field of atomic and molecular spectroscopy. He and his associates have determined the structures of a large number of diatomic and polyatomic molecules, including the structures of many free radicals, difficult to determine in any way, among those methylene, CH2. So this is really a historic discovery by Gerhard Hertzberg. He did it 11 years before he got the Nobel Prize. Okay? Now, this is my most important paper, amazing. We have published more than 1,700 papers since this one. This is not the only one, but it is. And you know, it is true with a lot of scientists that some of the very first things they do are the best. I don't know why that is. For mathematicians, it's especially true. You know, after you're 30 years of age, you can't do anything good in mathematics. You don't have brain cells left to do hard things. So this is it. New theoretical evidence for the nonlinearity of the triplet ground state of methylene. What was different about this paper? This is quantum mechanics. We're applying quantum mechanics to chemistry to look at a problem which appeared to have been solved by Hertzberg. Such an important problem, we thought, well, we'll look at this, and at least we ought to be able to confirm what the experiment did. The work was on the revolutionary side. These are early days for quantum chemistry, early days. I mean, basically, we couldn't do anything. Charles Bender and I had been spending all of our time developing new quantum mechanical methods, and we needed something to try them out on, and methylene was it. CH2 was it. So here's the methylene structure. This is what Hertzberg got the Nobel Prize for, the molecule being linear. The structures of molecules are really important, y'all. Some of you know that, and others don't. This is the structure that Hertzberg got the Nobel Prize. He didn't just get the Nobel Prize for the structure. He made the stuff and recorded its electronic spectrum. So, but this is the structure he deduced from experiment, and this is the one that Bender and I said was the right answer, that the molecule is bent. And this is a big difference. We could talk for a long time about this. It's bent 135, and this is what we said in opposition to the greatest physical chemist in the world. But thankfully, it's a good thing I was right. This was still just finishing my first year at Berkeley, and at Berkeley, our system in the U.S. is a lot more vicious than yours is. At Berkeley, when you're named an assistant professor, you've got about a 1/3 chance of survival. 2/3 of the time, after 5 or 6 or 7 years, they'll tell you, we love you, but you need to find employment elsewhere. If I had been, in this paper, Bender and I were very young. We just said, Hertzberg has misinterpreted his experiment. Nobody was better at interpreting experiments than Hertzberg. It's impossible. But we said it, and if I'd been wrong, I would have been among the 2/3 that go on to look for jobs elsewhere. Anyway, I could say more about this. This is a little description from a colleague at Caltech in Science Magazine. Everyone is, like a lot of other words, has a context. Everybody that was interested in chemistry, everyone believed the molecule to be linear until accurate theoretical studies finally led Bender and Schaefer to insist in 1970 that CH2 is bent by 135 degrees. Indirect experimental evidence for such highly bent CH2 came quickly. Yeah, so that's it. I wasn't a Christian then. I was happy with the result. Yeah, I was happy with the result. What was your question again? I did have things like that, though, later on.
It was, what have you found within like your experimentation over the years, your discoveries, or just in quantum, I guess, chemistry that has supported your belief in a God?
Yeah, that's good. Can you make this go all the way to the end? Yeah, so I don't have to keep doing that. Okay, let's go forward a little bit. 1990, my student Brenda Thies is working on the molecule Si2H2. We thought it'd be interesting, a thing to do. You know, we're interested in small molecules, what quantum mechanics can do for it. And she found something that was just unprecedented and amazing. Amazing. You know, Si2H2 is isoelectronic with acetylene. Acetylene is a very linear molecule. To bend it takes a lot of energy. So everybody was thinking that Si2H2 ought to be the same. Silicon is right below carbon in the periodic table. It is at the very end. Yeah, that's, yeah. You can have that. I'm going to have to go back a little bit. Oh, I've got to show that. Oh, yeah, I'll show some of these. Let's go back. I'm going to answer this question, though. I was astonished with this structure. It just, I never thought anything like this was possible. And virtually the rest of the scientific world that was interested in such things, that's everybody, was amazed. This structure has, the two silicon atoms are next to each other. There's one hydrogen on the end and one in between the two silicons. It's an amazing structure. And my response to that was, wow. So that's how God did it. And thankfully, experiments came along that showed we were right. Oh, you're going through there much faster than I am. This is wonderful. Oh, now I want to, not that one. No, that's, you didn't ask that question. You're not going to get the answer. We're not going to talk about the problem of evil unless people have to. Yeah. Oh, we need to go. Yeah, I want to go back a ways. Yeah, backwards. Oh, we didn't want to go all the way back. We're getting somewhere. Just keep going. It's a long way still. It's toward the back, but it's before we talk about the problem of evil. We're not going to talk about the problem of evil here, unless somebody needs to know about it. Right there. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Now I want to go forward one.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Oh. What has the homecoming queen been doing all this time that I've been a nerd? She's an elementary school teacher. Yeah. And that's why she can't come with me, because she's still teaching. She teaches elementary school. She teaches Latin to elementary school students. And she loves it, and they love her too. You can see that. Yeah, so that's that. I have these three wonderful pictures. This one is a picture of me and our head football coach. Football is a big deal in the USA. It's not like your football. Your football is played everywhere. Our football is only played in North America. But the football coach is a wonderful person. He came for my birthday one day. Mark Richt is a wonderful Christian man. And the next slide shows the homecoming queen. She doesn't like me. If you ever meet my wife, don't say anything about her being the homecoming queen. Never, never, never. I mean, she is really smart. She would much rather be thought of as a smart person than a homecoming. But anyway, I was invited to, and my wife, we were invited to go to Berlin. This is one of these summers we were staying in Munich. And we were invited to go to Berlin to a meeting of the Brandenburg Berlin Academy of Sciences. And it was only a one morning meeting, so it was tolerable. We listened to a bunch of nerds talk. And then my dear friend, Joachim Sauer, professor at the Humboldt University in Berlin, he'd invited us. They said, please have your wife come and bring some comfortable walking shoes, and we'll go on a hike together. in our country home. So we get into this minivan and we start heading north from Berlin. About an hour, and we get to less and less populated roads. Finally, there's just a very rough dirt road that goes on for about a mile, and we come into a little village of 7 homes. And who comes out to greet us but the most famous woman in the world? Anybody recognize her? My wife is the most wonderful person in the world, but the most famous woman in the world, and probably still so, is right there. That's Angela Merkel. She comes out, and she's got curry soup for us for lunch. She's got a raspberry cake, and then we're there all till 10 o'clock at night having cheese with her. And and we go on the hike, too. She and my wife spent all the time talking to each other. I was just talking to the nerds. But she is a nerd. She has a PhD in quantum chemistry. And her husband is also a nerd. He's a famous professor of quantum chemistry. He and I are the best of friends, and that's how we met Angela Merkel. So, yeah, I think the world would be a better place if she were still the prime minister of Germany. But that's as close to a political remark as I'm going to make now. The end. Oh no. Yeah, that's only the second edition. I've got the third edition. I'll send you a few copies. If some of these people are real scholars, they can take a look at it. But, yeah. Okay.
Of time, you'll end here if there's any other question. Just like, I think there's one part of the slides. If you're not a Christian and you are interested, you can want to talk via Zoom, just email us and we can also help arrange that as well. Can we give an applause to Professor Schaefer? Thank you so much. Yes.
I'll come back next year. We can talk about the problem of evil.
Thank you so much, Professor Schaefer. I think we are almost at the end of our time here. A quick announcement will be this coming Sunday, we are meeting at 9 to 10:20. So if you are interested, we meet at, let's make this slide. Yeah. Again, we meet at St. Margaret's venue, St. Margaret's, Ludbury. It's just 5 minutes walk from Exit 1, Exit 2. And we'll be talking about theism and atheism, God and science. To be a video that we'll be watching, then we'll be having a discussion on that. So if you're interested, just get in touch with me or any of the leaders here as well. So, and please, we have still some snacks and some tea. Don't be in a haste to leave. If you want to have a chat or take some pictures with Professor Schaefer, for those who are watching us, sorry you cannot take a picture with him, but so if you want to, he's not in a rush to leave currently, so if you want to continue with the discussion, this will be it. So thank you very much for coming. This ends our talk for the evening. Thank you.